welcoming you to our wellness webinar with our guest today, Marilyn Abrahamson, who is going to be sharing on the topic of brain health, being brain healthy. And she'll be sharing with us some everyday habits for a sharper mind. And I want to thank you all for coming. We have a large group of people from all around the world in our live session. And I want to remind you to please stay muted during our presentation with our guest. We will have a period of question and answer time at the end. In addition, I want to remind you that we're recording this, so you will have access to a recording, and you will have access to Marilyn's slides. So if you want to just sit back, relax, and let this wash over you, just bear in mind that you'll have access to all of those tools at your disposal. I want to thank you so much, Marilyn, for making time for us today and share a little bit more about Marilyn before she gets going. She is a brain health coach, and I think that's something we probably all need. Especially as we age, and for those of us who have a little extra stress in our lives, right, that can affect. So she's an educator, a licensed speech language pathologist, and she specializes in cognitive communication disorders. She brings a really unique perspective to brain health coaching by teaching people how to use their brains differently through practical, research-based compensatory strategies that support attention, memory, and executive function. So I'm really excited to get into this today and also share that Marilyn and I had some back and forth about tailoring this presentation for our Waldenstrom community who may experience brain fog, whether that's as a result of treatment or the disease itself. So I'm hoping that she will address that further as we get along into our presentation. But I just want to get started by asking Marilyn, what led you to this work, and why did you say yes to this particular opportunity to work with our group?
When I was a speech language pathologist in a hospital for my entire career, I worked one-on-one with adults with all different types of cognitive impairment for many different reasons. And it was just, it was so good to me, the career. And then in 2016, I was given the opportunity to create a community-wide brain health education program. And this I did with groups for the first time. A little nerve-wracking in the beginning, but I definitely got used to it. And I said to one of my coworkers once that if it would be socially acceptable for me to hop, skip, and jump through the parking lot back to my car at the end of the day, I would have done it. That's how I felt after I worked with groups. I think the feedback and the gratitude and the reward that I got from working with groups was so strong for me that it was something that even if I didn't do it as my primary work, I would continue doing it for as long as possible. No retiring. I have no plans to retire from working with groups, and it's just my favorite thing to do. I love, working with groups, lots of questions, lots of interaction. And that's why it was, yeah, I would never have said no to this opportunity.
Thank you. And we're so excited to dive in whenever you're ready, Marilyn.
Okay, let me share. The name of the presentation, as you can see, is Being Brain Healthy. And it sounds like it's very general, that title. But the research is now showing that there are actually things that we can do to keep our brains healthy. We know that as we age, the brain is always changing, for better or for worse. And one of the most exciting research that has come out over the last decade or so is that we have the power to change our brains. Our brain will adapt through something called neuroplasticity. I think I might have that on a future slide, but neuroplasticity is defined as the brain's ability to adapt and change in response to new learning, new experiences. And so today we're going to talk about 6 ways. I call it the Long Live Your Brain, 6 pillars of brain health. 6 ways that we can basically be in the driver's seat, that we can take control of something that we never really thought we had control of before. Something that's, I think that's very exciting. And we can do these every day, and they're simple things we can do. Now, of course, there is a difference between simple and easy. Change is never easy, even if the things that we're doing are simple, but we're going to talk about it today in a very bite-sized way so that it's doable. So these are the Long Live Your Brain 6 pillars of brain health. And we have challenge your brain every day. I call this the refire because it's kind of firing up your brain to do something that you enjoy. The second one is socializing and having fun. And we're going to go into depth for all of these. Third is stress management. Fourth is sleep. The fifth one is eating. And I say hydration as well. And the sixth is physical activity. And so let's dive in and talk about all of these in a little bit more depth. Okay. So pillar number 1, you want to keep your brain voluminous. Brain volume is something that's very important because, as we age, if they scan people's brains as they age, when people change in their skills and their levels, their abilities, they find that the brain actually shrinks and gets smaller. Now, we want to keep making new connections in our brain. Everything that you do, every skill, everything that you know, every piece of knowledge that you know is made up of connections in the brain. There are pathways that are traveling through your brain. You've seen commercials. I think it's a commercial for some sort of brain supplement or whatever, but they show like the sparks moving along the pathways. I think you've seen that. Anyway, that's a simulation on the commercial, but the concept of it is real. And all of those pathways that lead to another and lead to another and lead to another, they make our brains voluminous. Now, as we get older, we may stop doing things. And for example, think about if you had a career, think about all of the skills that not only you learned, but that you continue to use every day. And that meant that all of those pathways were firing off constantly all day long, and your brain felt sharp. If you quit your job and you don't replace that job with new learning, then what happens is all of the pathways that are associated with the skills that you activated during the day while you were working will begin to diminish. They'll stay where they are, but they diminish and they sort of, I want to use the word sort of like shrivel up a little bit. You can reactivate them. You'll remember things from your job. But if you're not using them, then they get smaller. Now, if that happens enough, then the brain itself, because it doesn't need to accommodate so much activity, will also shrink. And so mental stimulation is what we need in order to keep the brain voluminous. There's something called cognitive reserve, and that's what happens when we learn many, many different skills. We get more pathways and more pathways. People who learn how to play a musical instrument, people who learn multiple languages, even just one other language, will create cognitive reserve. And that means that if there is some sort of insult to the brain, whether it's an illness or an injury or some sort of memory disorder, then the more that's in there, the longer it will take before you notice the cognitive changes associated with that. I hope I explained that correctly. I think I did. So, how do you create new neural connections in the brain? There are some rules that we have to follow in order to do that. The first one is that the information that you learn should be new to you. Now, if you played piano as a child and you haven't played it in 40 or 50 years, there is the possibility that you could sit down. You'll be very rusty, of course, but you will at least be able to, you get a little head start over somebody that never played before, right? But the information should be new to you. So when you pick up piano again or whatever musical instrument, you'll just learn a different song, a different musical piece, and there you have it. You have novelty. And because we want to create a situation where we push our brain out of the routines that it already knows. So now, when I say learning a new language or a new musical instruments, those are absolutely the most difficult things for the brain to learn as an adult, not so much as a child. Kids are sponges. I mean, they can learn a new language, boom, like that, because they're within a language learning period of the brain. But when we're adults, our brains are not as receptive to that type of information. And absolutely, we can still learn it, but it's definitely much harder to do. But there are other things that you can learn, and it really doesn't matter what it is. It can be, learning about wines, the things that interest us when we get older, right? Bird watching, just anything that's new. The other thing that it needs to be is challenging. We want it to push us beyond our limits a little bit. You have to, in order to make any kind of progress in any way, you've got to walk up to that line and step over it. So it has to be a situation where you are feeling challenged. If you're lifting weights, for example, and it's too easy, it's going to be very difficult to build muscle. You have to get to a point where you feel like I just can't lift it anymore and then do it again, right? In order to build muscle. So you want to make sure that you're challenging your brain and that whatever it is that you're doing is hard, is difficult, is challenging. Of course, complexity, we know. We want it to, if possible, we'd like to have it be a little bit complex. So it gives an example of a recipe here. If you like to cook, then trying new and different recipes, maybe once a week, maybe every couple of days, is very, very good for your brain because there are a lot of steps to it. There's a lot of executive function that goes along with it. So it says here, I don't like to read the slide, but it kind of describes it well. Sequencing, right? You've got to do things in a certain order. Timing, meaning you've got to, think about when this has to go in the oven, when it comes out of the oven, and certainly focus and attention. And those are all executive function skills, which are located right here in the front of the brain. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. We want the activity to keep you active, not like you're just watching something. So it's something that you're actually going to do, and it should be something that will require you to stay focused. Now, focus is an interesting topic when it comes to our age. I assume everybody here is within a certain age group, so I'm right there with you. And I notice even that attention becomes more elusive as we get older. Has anyone noticed that? You can hit the reaction button on there. There is a reason for this. And the reason I want to tell you about this is because I want you to know that it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong and that this is natural. And that's because it's located right here, as I said, prefrontal cortex. And it's important to understand about this part of the brain. It is the last part of the brain to develop as a human, usually 26 or 27 years old, I would say, before it's finally completed its building process, and the first part of the brain to start diminishing probably in our late 40s and 50s. And it seems like it would be very counterintuitive for it to work this way because this is where our higher level cognitive functions are located. Things like attention, organization, decision making, problem solving, analysis of risk, and judgment. I mean, what's more important than these things, right? And yet, our brain is designed for these things to start diminishing in our 40s and 50s. It's crazy, but we have no control about that. But what's good is that we know that this is something that happens to all of us. It's normal. So I don't want you to be concerned if that happens. But also, sometimes when you know something and you understand why it's happening, you can do something about it and you can use your brain a little bit differently. So, there's also you can do repetition. I'm not going to go into too much detail with every one of these. You want your activity to have multisensory involvement, meaning sight, sound, touch, movement, everything that you can use in your brain. Social engagement would be great. Physical movement and emotional significance, meaning it should have meaning to you. And oops, I didn't mean to press that. And what all of this means is that if you're going to choose something that's going to help create new neural connections, you want it to be fun for you. And you want it to use as many parts of your brain as you can. So if it's social, like if you go to an exercise class and there's people there and you can laugh and talk and exercise and socialize and it's fun and you see things and you're touching and you're moving. And of course, in exercise classes, there's also repetition, right? So I went to a Zumba class on Saturday. I haven't been to a Zumba class in a really long time. And it was so much fun. And I felt like I wanted to do it every day. And that's the kind of thing. Now, it doesn't always have to be physical. The most important thing is that you get up in the morning and you say to yourself, wow, I can't wait to do it today. And that's the kind of thing you want because when you enjoy it, that's what's going to bring you back every day to do it over and over. Okay, let's move to pillar number 2. So everybody, I want you to start thinking about what your activity, I call it your refire activity. What are you going to do to refire your brain? Sometimes you just have to sit down and think about it. Sometimes sitting with a journal and making a list of things that you'd like to do. Maybe something you hadn't had time to do before, but you do now. So start thinking about it. Let's talk about socialization because socialization is the second pillar of brain health. You might not think about socialization as being something that's good for your brain, but our brains want connection. It wants to talk to other people. It wants to learn about other people. It makes us happier and it makes us laugh. And, socialization is great, but why is it so good? Oh, it went on to pillar 3 already. Let's talk about it. First of all, we need human connection. One of the most prevalent diagnoses right now is depression. And depression is the number one reason for cognitive impairment in this country. And the number one reason for depression in this country, I'm talking about the United States right now, is loneliness. And so if we get out there and just have some human connection, then we will be less likely to feel lonely. And I know during COVID, depression went through the roof, and that was because of the isolation. People were just by themselves all the time. And even a Zoom call, Zoom dinner with friends that they knew they could, they weren't in the same room with. People need it. Our brains need it. Now, it's also very challenging, right? Socialization can be exhausting. I know sometimes at the end of a long night of socializing, oh gosh, it's tiring. But what makes it so tiring? There are lots of things that go on in your brain when you're socializing that you're not even thinking about. So first, for example, you get to a party. Maybe you're waiting for somebody, but in the meantime, you really don't know people. You're just waiting for the person that you know. And what do you have to do? You have to make small talk. Now, most people I know do not like small talk. People feel awkward. People feel like they're struggling to figure out what to say, what to ask, because you're talking to someone that you don't know. And it's really hard to engage in a situation like that because you don't always care. If you say to somebody that you don't know, oh, how many kids do you have? What do you do for a living? Are you married? Things like that. It doesn't have a lot of relevance to your life. And so you're asking questions and you may not really care. Let's just say what's true, what the answer is, because you probably won't ever see this person again. You're just trying to pass the moment. So small talk is very, very difficult. But then your friends arrive and you're having a great time. And then someone tells a joke and you have to get it. Someone says something to the effect of, oh, remember that trip we took 20 years ago? Remember when we were in this country, and remember when you said this and I said that? And you have to, you're digging into your memory for all of these things. What if somebody has social anxiety? Social anxiety is a real thing. And why is that? It's because socialization is challenging on so many levels. When people get older, if a person feels like their brains are changing, not for the better, social anxiety becomes worse. And if they never had social anxiety before, they may develop it at that point because communication is difficult, it's challenging. And so, because of that, it is good for your brain. So, as people get older, they might feel, oh, you know what, there's a party tonight or there's a gathering tonight. I'm not going to go. It's probably a good idea to force yourself to go because you'll, probably have a better time than you think and because it's great for your brain. So before we go on, does anybody have any questions about the first two pillars? Okay. Let's go on to pillar number 3. Stress management. Oh boy, this is a big one. Oh, I'm having a little trouble with my thing here. Okay. Now, there are 2 types of stress. There's one that I kind of had before I started today, which was I was kind of excited. And that kind of stress causes a hormone to be released into the brain called epinephrine, also known as adrenaline. And that's a good kind of stress because when the situation that you're all excited about or even slightly nervous about is over, then adrenaline will drain out of the system and it's gone. But then that's a short-term stress. Sometimes, if you get too much adrenaline at one time, when the situation is over and it drains out of your system, you can be exhausted. So I'm going to tell you a quick story. I was in a barber shop with my 2 sons many, many years ago. They're in their 30s now, but they were 5 and 10 at the time. The barber shop was very, very crowded. The little one, my 5-year-old, had a lollipop in his mouth and bumped into something with his face. And when he came back, you can tell this stresses me out. When his face came away he hit my other son with it, the stick was gone. And I knew what had happened. I reached down his throat, pulled out the lollipop. The thing was dangling. They're made of paper, right? The stick. So I kept thinking if I had pulled any harder or at a different angle, I would have just gotten the end of the stick and the lollipop would have stayed, but that's not what happened. When that happened, the adrenaline drained out of my body because everything was fine. And then I almost fainted. So you've seen that happen, like where somebody will get upset about something really fast and then they'll faint. And that's because the adrenaline releases from the body. But that's actually good stress, the kind that I have right now. I'm really excited to be here. In fact, I got even more excited when I heard that there were 130 people and they were from all over the world. That was really exciting to me. But there's another kind of stress that is more chronic, the kind that keeps you on edge all the time. Sometimes when you feel like you're on edge and you don't even know why, but it's with you all the time. And that hormone is called cortisol. And cortisol is very damaging to the body. It's damaging to our blood vessels. It's damaging to our heart. It's damaging to everything. It causes belly fat. And it's damaging to the hippocampus of the brain, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for learning and memory. And all of us have, I'm sure, some level of cortisol because that's the world that we live in right now. Now, there are things that we can do to reduce our level of cortisol. I'm sure that Anne Grace, if you're interacting with her on a regular basis, you're learning lots of strategies to do that. I'm going to show you a strategy today that we can all try. We're going to do it after this. And the best way to do it is by doing a breathing exercise. Now, you can do diaphragmatic breathing exercises. There are meditations with breathing exercises. But I'm going to show you a simple one that when you feel like you need to rescue yourself from a stressful situation, this is really, really excellent to do. It's called the five-finger breathing brain break. I'm sure there was a better name for it, but that's kind of what I came up with. So if you look at this hand, you can use your own hand. But if you look at this, we're going to start, if you hold your hand like this, you're going to start right here. And before we do the breathing exercise, I want you to practice just really slowly going up, slowly cresting over the top of your finger, very slowly going down. And then you're going to do the next with the next one. When you get to the top of the finger, I want you to just almost stop, but don't. And then crest over and then go down. Now, before we go on, you're going to do this with your entire hand and then come back. So when you're on the way up, you're going to be breathing in through your nose, and it should be very slow because you want to be able to get to the end of the finger, which the thumb is going to be the shortest. When you crest at the top, that means you're going to hold. Hold your breath until you crest over, and then do the same. You're going to exhale out through your mouth. And then when you get to the bottom, you'll hold again and then go up. So all of this is very, very slow. Keep pulling in that breath at the top. Okay, let's give it a try. Let's do it, everybody, together. Ready? Start here. And let's go up and breathe in through your nose. Very, very slowly. Pull it in, pull it in. Crest at the top and hold. And go over. And as we go down, blow slowly out of your mouth. When you get to the bottom, hold again. And then when we get off the call, you can do it with your entire hand. And if you want, you can even go back to the beginning. And you should feel so relaxed after that. I learned this when I went to visit a biofeedback specialist. I didn't do it with my hand at that time, but he hooked my earlobe up to a machine that tested my vitals. And there was a screen that had waves, like it looked like EKG waves kind of thing. And there was a little ball that would go up, crest over the top and down. And he said, how are you feeling? And I said, I feel fine. I'm out of the office today. I feel great. He had me do this exercise. And at the end, I saw the vitals, my heart rate, my blood pressure, my breathing, my respiration rate, everything dropped. And I thought I felt well before. But I think we have this resting stress level that we don't even know about anymore. We think we feel fine, but we don't. We're just used to feeling this way. So if you do something like this, we don't have our earlobe hooked up to our vitals, but I can guarantee you're going to feel the difference when you do this. All right, let's talk about sleep. Now, this is something that we may feel that we don't have a lot of control over, but we have more control than we think. So, sleep is very important because there's something called the glymphatic system. The glymphatic system is our brain's way of clearing itself out because as we go through the day, the brain develops waste products from thinking, from eye strain, from stress, from all of the things. And the product that develops in the brain are plaques. Now, we've all heard of plaques, and we don't want plaques in our brain. And that's why sometimes at the end of the day, we feel foggy, we feel tired. Now, Anne was talking about brain fog, and sometimes lack of sleep is a huge reason for that. Sometimes we don't know what the reason is. But in general, if we improve our sleep patterns, then we will find that at least, even if it's not the root cause of the brain fog, it should improve. So technically, our brains need about 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And to do that, there are some things that we might need to do to make it easier for us to fall asleep. So one of the things that we can do now, you don't, as Anne said, you don't have to take notes. You can if you want, but the recording is going to go out. So one of the things that we want to do is avoid using screens, any kind of screens, for 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. That's really very important. The screens that we use, our phones, our iPads, things like that, have a blue light that comes out. It's a light wave that tells our brain that it's morning and it's time to wake up. We have a circadian rhythm that is ruled by the light. And so when we introduce that type of light into our eyes before we go to bed, it's confusing to the brain and it reduces the release of something called melatonin, which is what makes us sleepy. Another thing that we want to do is we want to have a routine before we go to bed. Maybe, after cleaning up dinner, maybe sitting down, reading a good book, keeping the lights a little bit lower, taking a shower or a bath, something that relaxes us, anything that helps you, but a routine that will teach your brain, this is what comes next, this is what comes next. And we want our brains to feel like sleep is coming next, because that's when it's all about melatonin. You want to start getting that drowsy feeling and then just go to bed. You want your room to be cool and dark. Your temperature, I think they say 67, 68 degrees is good. It's very hard to sleep when your body feels hot. If you like to sleep under lots of blankets, keeping a cold room makes it very cozy. That's always helpful too. And of course, we want the room to be dark. Keep in mind that things like alarm clocks, the light that's on your television, I happen to have like a battery charger for my phone in the room. I have to cover it. Keep the room dark. All of those lights will get into your eyes. And even when your eyes are closed, if it senses light, your brain is gonna start waking you up. Even sometimes like the television off I don't even have a TV in my room anymore because the TV that I had, even when it was off, it had like this little white light in the front. I don't even know why. I guess it showed that it was plugged in. I don't need to know that. But that light, once I realized what was, how that was affecting me, I got rid of it. So, so those are some things that you can do. And you want to make sure that you you're going to wake up in the morning, by the way. No matter what time you go to bed, your body generally wakes you up at a certain time. So you want to try as well as you can to get the sleep on the front end of the brain of the night. So for example, if you wake up normally at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, even if you go to bed at 2 in the morning, you're probably going to wake up at that time. It's a phenomenon, but it's true. I mean, unless you're so completely exhausted, that's usually an aberration. In general, we wake up at the same time every day. And so instead of going to bed at 11 o'clock, maybe get into bed at 9:30 or 10 o'clock and just relax, read a book, but just get yourself in bed. Don't use a screen, read an actual book. Oh, and by the way, if you have a Kindle, I did a little research. They say that Kindles do not emit blue light, that it's a different kind of light. It doesn't keep me awake unless I'm reading something that's really very stimulating. So I try to keep the boring books on my Kindle so I can go to sleep at night. But that doesn't keep me awake. If I'm looking at my phone, which, sometimes I don't practice what I preach. But if I do look at my phone, I won't go to sleep. So there's the experiment right there. How are we doing on time? Okay. I want to make sure that we have time for questions. All right, let's talk about diet. So, nutrition. Your brain really, really responds to the things that you eat. So, we all know about the Mediterranean diet, right? It it's a wonderful diet and it's so easy to follow. And it really is just lots of fruits and vegetables and whole grains, a lot of fish. It really emphasizes omega-3 fatty acids for the brain, which is in salmon, which is in walnuts. They did research that showed that people who eat walnuts in the morning, like on your yogurt or something, will actually have improved brain function throughout the day. Same with blueberries, lots and lots of antioxidants. We all love these foods, right? Just it's I mean, you can eat red meat on there, but they do ask you to minimize it on the Mediterranean diet. It also says you can have a glass of red wine. Um, this is not a reason to start drinking if you don't drink. But on the Mediterranean diet, it says you can have a glass of red wine, which is nice. Now, the MIND diet, which has a lot of research associated with it as well, is a combination of something called the Mediterranean and the DASH diet. They are very, very similar. The biggest difference is red meat is even more discouraged on this diet. And it's lower in sodium because the DASH diet is really more of a cardiac diet. And if you think about things that are on the Mediterranean diet, like a lot of feta cheese and things like that, that's very salty, not on the MIND diet. But either one of these diets is really great. And there's lots of cookbooks and things that you can get. I love, if you can find this on YouTube, the mediterraneandish.com. It is chock full of the greatest recipes. I've tried so many of these, and these will be good for your refire activity. If you want to start making new recipes, you can just go on this website. And there's lots and lots of books with the MIND diet, Mediterranean diet. So really explore this. Now, before we go on to the next one, I want to talk about hydration. Because if you want to talk about, something that can cause brain fog, one of the most common symptoms of brain fog is caused by dehydration. So I will tell you this morning, for the first half of the morning, thought that maybe I hadn't slept very well. And then I looked at my phone and I saw, because I sleep with my Apple Watch, so it tracks my sleep. I got 9 hours last night and it was pretty solid. Why was I feeling brain fog? Because I didn't have a lot of water this morning. I got up, I worked out, and then I had to get right to work. I think I had a half a cup of coffee. I have a big cup like this now. So I already drank a full one. Once I got through maybe half of that today, my brain cleared up. So if you're feeling foggy, make sure that you're hydrating because your brain is made of water, right? 70%. So you've got to make sure that you're hydrated. I just wanted to bring that up. Okay. All right. The last pillar is physical activity. I don't even call it exercise. Exercise sounds like a drag. People don't like to exercise, but they love to be active. And if they find something that they love to do, then you don't feel like it's exercise. So we want something that's going to increase oxygen and blood flow to the brain. Now, what better way to get oxygen and blood flowing to the brain? I mean, this is what your brain works on is blood flow and the nutrients that it brings and oxygen. So we've got cardio, which is obviously, you know what cardio is, walking or dancing. You can do a Zumba workout that, is always fun. Of course, you've got to combine it with strength training, and any kind of resistance is fine. You can use weights. You can use resistance bands. They have things now, Pilates bars, all kinds of things. It's all out there. And of course, 10 minutes a day is excellent. It'll get you started. But really, you want to try to do maybe 20 minutes a day, every day. You want to try to get 130 to 150 minutes of cardio every week if you can. And that means getting your heart rate up above 100. And of course, strength training a little bit every day. So now, for example, I have a desk job. I sit all day. I have a little something that pops up on my phone every hour that says drink water. I have a drink of water. And I also use that. So I do. I take a little water when I do that, although I didn't listen to it this morning. And you saw what happened. But I also use it to get up. And sometimes I'll do I call them push outs against the kitchen counter is the perfect height. It's almost like you're doing a push up. So you kind of like put your legs kind of away from it. And you would be surprised how challenging it is to do what is actually like a push up, but against your kitchen counter. It's very challenging, and I always feel it along here. So that's good. Another time I'll get up, I'll just do 10 or 15 squats. Get up from the chair, get down. Those are really important because we want to keep our legs strong. Whatever you can do. I'll pretend to jump rope for, a minute, minute and a half, and then I get back to work. Otherwise, I'm just going to do nothing but sit all day. So if that's you, then, just maybe give yourself, put something on your phone that'll give you a reminder every hour to get up and move. And that's really all you need to do. Okay, so if we put it all together, we know that we've got these 6 pillars. I'm just moving these pictures around so it's not blocking. The important part here is consistency. You know that you're not going to be able to make all of these changes in one day or in one week. You can try doing one each week. Most of this you're doing, right? Or at least some of these you're doing. You want to try to just maybe this week make a list of things that will be fun for you to learn. And then, you can pick one and start learning it. Next week, you will commit to socializing more. The following week, maybe you'll try some stress management things. So you want to try to make these changes gradually rather than making them all at once. The importance is knowing what they are so that you can pick the ones that you need to do and know. And also, someone once said to me, but we know all these things. We do, right? We do know these things, but I have a saying that says we know what to do, but we don't always do what we know. And sometimes we just need a reminder, and sometimes we just need someone to tell us how good it is for us to do these things. So before we go on, before I go to questions, oh, that's what I said. Progress, not perfection. Okay, so before we finished, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. That's my website, by the way, everybody, if you want to check it out. longliveyourbrain.com. So I'm going to ask everybody now if you'd like to unmute, if you'd like to make any comments, or if you have any questions, I would love to talk to you about those now.
Thank you. And just bearing in mind that we are still recording, so to make sure that you are comfortable with having your image in our YouTube video that will be public, and then we'll stop the recording and have some time to be off of that if you do not feel comfortable. So those who do feel comfortable coming on, I see Dana has unmuted.
On the top or bottom of the screen, also, there's a raise hand button that you can press, and then it kind of lets me know that you have a question. So Dana has a question.
Hi, thank you very much. I really appreciate your presentation. I know I've been reading a lot about neuroplasticity and changing the brain. I do have a healthcare background myself. One of the questions I do have is I finished chemo a year and 4 months ago, and then I had a couple of complications since then. And I'm curious, and again, even it might be a question for the group, is other things, I'm doing everything that you're suggesting, but the brain, I'm finding that my word finding, when I look back to what I function, like I worked full time in healthcare in a manager role, and I'm finding a year and 4 months later, the word finding is still a challenge. And I say I'm eating well. I've always been exercising well. I'm reading. I try to read a fiction book. I read I've been listening to podcasts that I find are stimulating my brain. I'm knitting. I still have to nap, but the brain fog is something that has me I'm just concerned because I'd say I'm like a 90% of what I used to do before I was diagnosed and had treatment. So I'm just curious, maybe if you can give suggestions or what you find with people with IWMF that have Waldenstrom's, if they find this is just something part of the disease. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, word finding is very difficult. The suggestions that I usually give people who tell me they have problems with that is things like describe. I'm sure you're doing a lot of these things, using description, using gestures. And I do tell people that sometimes we have to change what our expectations are around communication. And really, the goal is for the other person to say, "Oh, yeah, I know what you mean," and just say, "Well, it doesn't matter how I get there, whether I have to, act it out, do charades, or say, oh gosh, it's that thing that you use when you do this, that kind of thing." The other thing I want to say about chemo fog in general is I certainly not going to ask what type of cancer you had, but I will say that sometimes in certain situations, different types of chemo, different types of cancer, that kind of thing. When there's a change in the level of estrogen, when estrogen drops rapidly, it affects areas of the brain that are responsible for word retrieval, which is why, a lot of people, even in menopause, will start to experience word retrieval changes that are so, I'm getting it now, okay? Not gradual, that are so fast, I guess, that they notice it. And so, I wish I had more information on that. The one good thing I can say about brain fog that's associated with chemotherapy is now doctors are recognizing that it is actually a thing. And so many women in the past had said that their doctors poo-pooed it and said, it'll come back. Don't worry about it. You're feeling sick, you're feeling distracted, you're feeling, all of these things, and it's affecting your ability to focus. And that's not at all what it is. It's a real thing, and they recognize it now. And so, what that tells me is that now, finally, there will probably be more research in that area. Up until now, there really haven't been a lot of research studies done on chemofog. Those who go through it know that it's true and have been told that it's just something that they have to live with because they don't have answers. But when you're talking about word retrieval, it's really all about compensatory strategies.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Anne, are you raising your hand?
I am.
Okay.
First, thank you very much, Marilyn.
Thank
It
you.
was lovely to be reminded of all these things that we, as you said, mostly already know. And we do need those refreshers. And it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
I would just wanted to speak to reassure Dana that I had the same experience after bendamustine and rituximab with the brain fog. I, the teacher of English, could not read a book. I couldn't hold my attention for more than a magazine article. It took 2.5 years for me to recover from that, Dana. So there's hope. Eventually, you'll recover.
Thank you.
That's all I wanted to
Helps.
say.
Yeah, that helps very much, Anne. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Does anyone else have any questions?
We did have some questions coming into the chat.
Okay.
Is there a difference between how introverts handle socializing versus extroverts? What about morning people versus night people? And I don't know if you want to comment on that or the other notes there in the chat.
I don't know if I'm qualified to talk about introverts versus extroverts, but what I can say is that, I mean, if you are one or the other, then you know that introverts become exhausted from socialization and extroverts are, it kind of fills them up with energy. I do know that that's something that happens. I think that people become introverts as they get older if they feel like their communication skills become more compromised. And I think people feel self-conscious about their communication skills. And because of that, they might pull back from social situations. And really, what does that do? It kind of feeds into the loss of those communication skills. I'm not sure if that's the answer that whoever asked that question, I'm not sure that's what they were looking for, though. Did I answer that question okay for you? I don't know who asked that question.
That was me.
Judith, yeah.
That
Did,
was.
did I answer it for
I'm
you?
not sure because it's on the list of things, pillars, and but it is a problem that
Oh,
how does an introvert socialize to good effect or to an outcome without having the bad outcome, which would be you want to be in bed for a couple of days after you've successfully socialized.
okay. Okay, I understand your question now. Um, so when you say in bed for a few days, are you saying because it's just so exhausting and almost traumatic?
Yes, and certainly anxiety producing and exhausting. I need like a recovery time,
Hmm.
which basically is anti-socializing. I mean, if you tell me I have to go, if there's a meeting in a month or an event or something, that's probably my big event, like once a month, sure. But if you want me to join a club, as a social worker suggested to me as an antidote for grief, forget it.
Has it always been this way?
Yes.
Uh,
Actually, I'm way more social now, which is truly frightening.
well, here you are talking in a group.
Exactly.
So I mean, I
But
think,
and probably won't hear from me for a few days, except by email. I can write, but
yeah.
being on this
Um,
kind of thing is on a regular basis is worse than exercise. I mean, exercise I'd root for more socializing.
Sometimes social, I mean, as I'm saying, I'm not a psychologist or a counselor. Um, you know, I, rather than answering this question, it's probably better for somebody who is more qualified to answer a question like that. I don't want to give it advice that might not be the best because the advice I was going to say is, possibly trying to build it up a little bit, a little longer each time. But I'm not sure that's the best thing for you if it's going to be traumatizing. So I'm gonna err on the side of caution and pass on answering that because I don't want to give you bad advice.
I will say one thing about this particular human being that I have gotten to know over the past few years is that she is interacting a lot more in our Zoom space. And that sense of felt connection is real. And I think that that's helpful and that could count as part of your
Oh,
pillar, Judith.
yeah, that's why I was so impressed that you were here and just speaking out on this topic. I mean, it takes bravery to do that for sure.
Does it change? Does it count?
Yes, it counts.
I was
It
wondering.
definitely counts.
Thank you, Anne. That context helped.
Good, good. Were there any more, Anne? Were there any more questions?
Yeah, I had one more question about CogniFit. Have
Ah,
you heard of that?
mm-hmm.
One of our folks here attending has had actually worked for them for years.
Oh, so I'm gonna guess that was Amy. Right? Because Cognifit, I worked
Yes.
with them. I did a research study with Cognifit many, many years ago, and
Hmm.
with patients with multiple sclerosis. And
I remember that study.
are you kidding? You do?
That because I worked at the very beginning and several years after with the professor Brezhnev
Evelyn.
and Dr. Evelyn Chatillo, correct.
Is she okay? I know she was.
I haven't been in touch for many years, but as far as I know, yes, because I still
Wow.
once in a while have contact with people from the company.
Oh, that's
But
funny.
they coined the phrase "use it or lose it."
Use it or lose it, right? I do
Correct.
remember. So CogniFit is a brain training program that you can, put on your phone or your iPad or your computer. I think it's a touchpad. And so brain training itself, the research has shown that doesn't necessarily translate into general intelligence. I do have an aside to all that, a positive thing to say. So, what it says basically is that it just makes you better at the game, better at the task. And you're not going to do all of this brain training and suddenly come out smarter. However, the caveat, the positive, is that the newest research has shown that processing speed training is it causes more positive neuroplastic changes in the brain than any other kind of brain training. So I believe that if you're doing the pillars of brain health, that by doing some brain training on a program like that, a brain training program like that, then what it does is it puts a timer and it says, do this task, but you have to do it before the bell rings or something like, and it just forces you to do it faster. And by doing that, you're improving your processing speed. The information that comes in is processing in your brain faster, and that's causing neuroplasticity, positive neuroplastic changes in the brain to happen. And so that's how things like Cognifit and there are other ones, Brain HQ and things like that, they all help your brain. But you've got to do the processing speed training games on there for it to actually do really good work for your brain. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Marilyn. I so appreciate it. And it's very validating to learn about the 6 pillars of brain health. With our integrative wellness program, I'm going to have to give a plug because we're doing so many of these in our offerings. We're giving you new things, new ways of moving your body. It's all in a social environment where we have chat afterwards. So, I want to kind of tout that and tell you to look at the wellness calendar on the IWMF website if you were curious to learn more. And I just felt like I wish I could also get together and have a nice meal with everyone because that is a really important part. And then also, some of our offerings are designed to help you relax. So this is a stress management piece and also could help you get better sleep with our yoga nidra, which is, kind of a guided relaxation. So it's just really supportive of what we're doing, Marilyn. And it's really nice to hear from an expert who knows about brain health, that all of these things are important. And I personally know that I need to do more with giving my brain new things. And, I think this has been very helpful. So does anybody have any other questions for Marilyn? We will have all of this you get her slides, you'll have her contact information, we'll get the recording, and I'll probably, kind of distill it down for us in a follow-up email. Anybody want to share anything else? I see Jane unmuted.
I just wanted to ask a quick question. Was that website Mediterranean Dish or Mediterranean Diet?
It's the MediterraneanDish.com.
Dish. Okay.
Actually, you know what? Let me type it in here. Okay. I have to make sure I spelled Mediterranean correctly. Mediterranean.
I wrote it down 3 times. The word Mediterranean.
The MediterraneanDish.com. That's it. So good.
Thank you. And, I wanted to just ask if you had any suggestions other than beans for someone who is sort of mostly in the Mediterranean diet direction in terms of what I eat. I don't eat red meat. And I don't like beans, but I'm worried about protein because as you age, they say protein is also really important. I do eat eggs, but I don't eat them every day.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering about protein and being on the Mediterranean spectrum, I would say.
Well, I would say that you can use plain Greek yogurt. You can take plain Greek yogurt with a little bit of milk and mix in some protein powder. You can also add chia seeds to that. Make sure they're soaked before you eat them. Cottage cheese is huge now. You can do so much. There's so many recipes now where they're using cottage cheese instead of cream cheese, higher protein. Nuts, walnuts, nuts have a lot of protein. There are a lot of sources of protein out there that we probably haven't thought of.
Thank you.
By the way, I know if you want to add protein even to eggs, I actually made eggs. I heard this recipe. I thought it was going to be terrible, but it was great. I made scrambled eggs, and instead of putting milk in it, I put a tablespoon, you can even put more, of cottage cheese in there. I mean, don't knock it until you've tried it. It's really, really good. It's very creamy. And believe it or not, it cooks up really well. It's not going to look great in the bowl, but it tastes really good. You season it up with some salt and pepper, and it's good.
Thank you so much.
I hope that helps.
There's so many great ideas for our community. We're so grateful to you.
It was a pleasure.